The sun was a burning eye in the sky. The sand stretched endlessly, shifting like a living sea of gold and red. Kale's lips were cracked, his throat dry, and his every step felt heavier than the last. Each gust of wind brought a stinging bite, sand scraping across his skin. He had been walking for days, maybe weeks. Time blurred in the heat, and water had become a memory he clung to with a desperate ache. He squinted at the horizon. A faint shimmer rose in the distance, maybe a mirage, maybe hope. His stomach growled, but hunger had become easier to ignore than thirst. He dug through his worn satchel for what little he had left. A small pouch of dried roots and seeds, bitter and dry, crumbled between his fingers. It was not enough, but it was something. Kale's mind wandered as he walked, thinking of the stories his grandmother had told him when he was a boy. Tales of humans who could survive anything, who could bend the world to their will. He had always believed them, but now, in this unending desert, belief felt like a fragile thread. Still, he had to keep moving. To stop was to die. The ground beneath him changed. The sand grew rockier, sharp stones scraping the soles of his boots. He slowed, testing each step, aware that one wrong move could tear him open. Sweat ran down his back, soaking the tattered shirt he wore. Kale's skin felt raw, and every breath he took was like swallowing fire. In the distance, he saw movement, a ripple across the dunes. His heart leapt. Could it be water? Could it be life? He staggered forward, ignoring the burning in his legs. But as he got closer, he realized the truth. It was not water. It was something else, something alive, but not friendly. A sand creature, a predator of the wasteland, emerged from a dune. Its body was long and sinewy, scales glinting like broken glass in the sun. Its eyes were black, unblinking, and fixed on him. Kale froze. He had heard of them, these hunters of the desert. They could smell a human from miles away, and they never tired. He had no weapon, no chance to fight. He remembered the small knife in his satchel and drew it, gripping it like a lifeline. The creature hissed, a sound like metal scraping on stone. Kale's mind raced. He had to survive. Humans were clever. Humans were fast. He had to be. The creature lunged. Kale rolled to the side, sand flying into his eyes. He struck with the knife, grazing the creature's side. It hissed and recoiled, then circled him, testing, waiting. Kale backed away toward a small outcropping of rocks. He remembered the solar water condenser he had built in a moment of desperation back at a ruined settlement. It had failed to make water, but it had taught him that humans could make tools out of nothing. He grabbed a piece of sharp rock, held it like a spear, and lunged at the creature. It dodged, faster than he expected, but Kale had learned to adapt. He feinted, then kicked sand into its eyes. The creature shrieked and turned away, giving Kale a moment to sprint toward the rocks. He climbed the outcropping, panting, sweat and sand mixing into a gritty paste on his skin. From this vantage point, he could see farther across the desert. And then, he saw it a settlement, towering walls, strange structures that glinted in the sunlight. Smoke rose from a central fire. People, humans, moved along the walls, trained, disciplined, like a well-oiled machine. Kale's heart raced. Water, shelter, life. But there was something in the air that made him pause. The humans were armed. Their movements were precise, almost aggressive. He could feel their eyes on him even from this distance. He had survived the desert, but these humans were something else. He had to reach them, but he knew the rules of survival. He could not just walk in and ask for help. He had learned that humans could be cruel when resources were scarce, and water was the most precious resource of all. Kale began to descend the rocks carefully, keeping his figure low against the shifting dunes. He remembered every lesson the desert had taught him: the wind's direction, the way heat distorted vision, the way creatures hunted. Humans had survived this world, yes, but he would have to prove himself. By nightfall, he had approached closer. He could hear the clanging of metal, the disciplined chants of warriors training. He crouched behind a dune, watching as they moved with purpose. Their leader, or perhaps the most skilled, stood apart. A woman with eyes sharp as blades, her movements precise, commanding. Kale felt a shiver run down his spine. He had crossed deserts, fought creatures, and survived hunger and thirst. But this was a test he could not yet see. Humans like these were not merciful. He would have to earn his place or face the desert alone again, with death waiting. He settled into the sand, waiting until the night cloaked the land in shadows. The air cooled, and he could feel his body recovering slightly. He whispered to himself, almost like a prayer, "I am human. I can survive. I will survive." As darkness fell, the settlement's fires burned like stars scattered on the desert floor. Kale's eyes never left the warriors, and one thought repeated itself in his mind: waters earned. Serve or we feast. A cold wind carried the scent of iron and sand, and Kale shivered. Not from the cold, but from understanding. This was a world where only the strong survived. But humans could overcome anything. They had to. And he would have to become one of them. The desert night stretched on, filled with distant howls of predators and the quiet hum of the settlement's life. Kale closed his eyes for a moment, listening, learning, preparing. Tomorrow, he would take the first step into their world. Tomorrow, he would fight for survival not against the desert, but against humans who had mastered it. He did not know if he would live, but one thing was certain: Kale was human, and humans always fought back. The first rays of the sun struck Kale's face, burning him awake. The night in the desert had been cold, the silence broken only by distant howls of creatures he could not see. His body ached, but exhaustion was nothing new. He had survived worse. The settlement lay ahead, a fortress of stone and metal that shimmered in the morning light. Every wall, every tower, seemed alive with purpose, radiating strength that only humans could build in a world that sought to crush them. Kale's stomach tightened with fear and anticipation. He had survived the desert, outsmarted predators, and endured thirst and hunger. But entering this place, this haven of warriors, was a challenge of a different kind. It was a test he could not prepare for. He had to earn his water. He had to earn his life. He moved carefully, keeping low in the dunes. From this distance, he could see more clearly the people moving along the walls. Men and women trained with spears, axes, and strange devices that gleamed in the sun. Their movements were precise, almost mechanical, but filled with deadly grace. They shouted commands, their voices sharp and unyielding, cutting through the desert air like a blade. Kale's heart pounded. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back, to flee into the desert where at least he could hide. But survival was not about fear. It was about courage, about taking risks. He remembered the words his grandmother had told him long ago. Humans are strongest when they face the impossible and refuse to bend. He clenched his fists and pressed forward. As he neared the walls, a figure stepped out. She was tall, her posture perfect, her movements fluid. Her eyes were sharp, piercing as though they could see into his very soul. Lyra. Kale did not know her name yet, but he could feel her authority. She hissed, a low, dangerous sound that made Kale pause. "Water's earned," she said. Her voice was cold, harsh, but calm. "Serve, or we feast." Kale swallowed. The words were a warning, but also a challenge. He nodded, not trusting his voice to speak. Lyra's eyes narrowed, studying him, weighing him, deciding if he would live or die. Without another word, she motioned him forward. "Enter," she commanded. Kael stepped cautiously through the gates, feeling the eyes of every warrior upon him. The air smelled of iron, sweat, and sand. Every step he took echoed on the stone, loud and clumsy compared to the silent confidence of the trained humans around him. The courtyard was vast. Fires burned in stone pits, and humans trained relentlessly. Some sparred with weapons, others practiced tactics, and some carried heavy containers of water, moving with a rhythm that was almost musical in its precision. Kael's eyes widened. Humans had survived this desert, not by luck, not by chance, but by mastering every element of it. He had thought he was clever, he had survived the sand and the predators, but here, he felt like a child. Lyra approached him again, her eyes never leaving his face. "Name?" she demanded. "Kael," he whispered. His voice was hoarse, barely audible. She nodded slightly, as if considering the name, then pointed toward a nearby line of warriors. "You will be tested. Every trial will decide if you live or die. Fail, and the desert will take you back. Succeed, and maybe you will drink." Kael's throat tightened. He had faced death before, but the weight of human judgment was heavier than any predator's teeth. He had no choice. He had to prove himself. The first trial was simple in words but brutal in execution. He was to fetch water from a hidden cistern beyond the walls, a place filled with obstacles and dangers. Other warriors had already attempted it. Their success measured not only in speed, but in cunning and endurance. Kael knew that this trial would test his mind as much as his body. He sprinted toward the path Lyra indicated. The walls of the settlement seemed to close around him as he moved. The desert beyond was not empty. It was filled with pitfalls, traps, and natural hazards. Kael leaped over jagged rocks, slipped across loose sand, and ducked under branches that seemed almost alive, lashing out with sharp tips. Sweat poured down his body, mixing with the dust and sand. His lungs burned, and his legs trembled, but he pushed onward. He reached the first obstacle, a narrow chasm with jagged rocks at the bottom. Other warriors had crossed it with ease, using ropes and precise leaps. Kael hesitated. One wrong move, and he would fall, and the desert would claim him. He remembered the training he had done on his own, the practice of observation, of calculating distances, of trusting his instincts. He ran, jumped, and barely landed on the edge. His foot slipped slightly, but he caught himself, heart pounding, chest heaving. The path led him into a grove of twisted metal and stone, remnants of some ancient structure. Kael ducked and weaved through the debris, his eyes scanning constantly for danger. Then he heard it a growl, low and menacing. A creature, fast and sharp-toothed, lunged from the shadows. Kael's hand went to his knife, but he remembered another lesson. Humans survive not only with weapons but with brains. He grabbed a loose metal pipe, swung it, and startled the creature. Using the moment, he sprinted past, leaving it behind. At last, he saw the cistern. Water shimmered inside, reflecting the morning sun. Kael's throat tightened with longing. He sprinted forward, scooping water into his cupped hands. Relief washed over him, cool, sweet, life-giving. He drank greedily, then paused. The trial was not over. He still had to return. The path back was more dangerous. The warriors observed from the walls, silent but unyielding. Kael could feel their judgment pressing down on him. Every step counted. He balanced the water carefully, dodged falling debris, and kept his senses sharp. Suddenly, a section of the ground gave way. Kael tumbled down a slope, hitting stones and sand. Pain shot through his shoulder, but he refused to give in. He rolled, got to his feet, and ran, clutching the water as if it were gold. When he finally returned to the courtyard, Lyra was waiting. Her eyes were sharp, unreadable, but something flickered in them. Interest, perhaps, or respect. "You survived," she said, her voice low. "Many have failed, few return with water. You are clever, Kael. But cleverness alone is not enough. Strength, endurance, and loyalty. These are what keep humans alive here." Kael gasped for breath, his body trembling from exhaustion. He had earned the water, but he knew this was only the beginning. The warriors had rules, and survival here would demand more than he had ever given before. Lyra motioned him forward. "You will eat. You will rest. Tomorrow, your next trial begins. Fail, and the desert will take you. Succeed, and you may live among us." Kael nodded, understanding fully. The water in his hands was not just life, it was a symbol of what humans could do. They could survive where others perished. They could endure what seemed impossible. He had earned it, but only barely. As he drank and ate under the watchful eyes of the warriors, Kael felt a spark of hope. He could survive here. He must survive. Humans were meant to endure, to fight, and to rise above the challenges of their world. And he, Kael, was human. Night fell again over the settlement. But it was different from the cold night outside the walls. The air here was alive with discipline and strength. Kael lay on a hard mat, exhausted but alert, listening to the sounds of the warriors, their movements, their training, their lives. He realized that survival here was not just about fighting. It was about learning, adapting, and becoming part of something greater than oneself. Tomorrow, the real trials would begin, and Kael would face them, as humans always did, with courage, wit, and an unbreakable will. For now, he closed his eyes, feeling the cool night air on his face, the scent of sand and fire around him. He had crossed the desert, he had earned water, and he had taken the first step into a world where humans were not just survivors, they were warriors. And Kael would learn to be one of them.